Biden administration has raised serious concerns about the collection of data by Chinese companies, particularly on U.S. drivers and the infrastructure of the U.S., as well as having the potential for foreign manipulation of vehicles which are connected to the Internet and navigation systems. The U.S. Commerce Department is seeking a ban on the sale of connected and autonomous vehicles in the U.S. that are equipped with both Chinese and Russian software and hardware, with the stated goal of protecting national security and U.S. drivers. Commerce officials described the rules announced Monday as proactive and necessary, given all the bells and whistles on cars like microphones and cameras and Bluetooth. Those things can reveal a range of personal information about car owners. Joining us now to talk about this is Brandie Nonnecke, founding director of the CITRIS Policy Lab, associate professor at the UC Berkeley Goldman School of Public Policy, and the host of the podcast TecHype. All right, thanks so much for joining us and talking about this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, like all things these days technical, this is really complicated. So let's start at the very beginning and try to explain to people what the U.S. government's concern is with these cars and this software.
Yeah, the move by our federal government, it's not unprecedented. We've seen over the past year or two, looking at blocking TikTok, the social media platform, over concerns that China was collecting data in order to, enact surveillance against American citizens. Now, this move, it's really quite interesting because there is a history of China actually trying to attack our critical infrastructure. And one of the groups that is behind that is called Volt Typhoon, and it's a Chinese state-sponsored hacker group. And it's been known that they have sought to compromise thousands of devices in order to infiltrate, potentially shut down our critical infrastructure like communications, energy, and transportation systems. Now, one thing that's really important is that currently there is not a lot of Chinese software or hardware in our connected vehicles. However, with the automotive industry, booming and the adoption of electronic vehicles, connected vehicles increasing year over year, manufacturers are going to want to look for the best fit of software or hardware, often at the cheapest price. Now, putting this ban in place would restrict, domestic automobile manufacturers from procuring that technology. And in doing so, the federal government thinks that, look, we're going to get out ahead of this. We're going to ensure that we don't end up in a position where we have thousands of connected vehicles driving along the roads that are connected to critical infrastructure that could pose a potential national security problem.
I think that Ford and General Motors both make a car in China that they bring for sale to the United States. But you're right, there aren't many, if any, actual Chinese EVs or other types of automobiles for sale in the United States. When you say connecting to critical infrastructure, what exactly does that mean? Is it like when you plug it in to charge it, or when it's talking to, all cars are computers now. How is the car communicating with our critical infrastructure?
Yeah, I'd say my first concern is the electrical grid, right? We have to charge up these EVs, that you plug them into those charging stations. And if you have some malware that's been embedded in your vehicle, that malware can now be redistributed and passed on to the other vehicles and to our energy infrastructure. That to me is one of the biggest concerns. But also, as these vehicles become more sophisticated in their technology, and as we continue to see cities investing in that smart city technology, we're going to see vehicles communicating a lot more with infrastructure around them, like the other vehicles or infrastructure on roads, the lights, the tolls, everything.
I assume, my car has multiple cameras all over the car. I can see forward, sideways, backwards, underneath. I assume that that's one of the vulnerabilities as well, especially for somebody who works at a, sensitive installation, right? An infrastructure installation, a power plant, a military base, a federal research center.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, these cars are essentially computers, and they're equipped with multiple cameras, sensors. That's just a wealth of information. You can use that vehicle to capture a lot of data and insights, and in the wrong hands, that's a serious, serious issue.
So this extends really beyond just automobiles, right? Like my refrigerator, it talks to my Wi-Fi and it sends me messages when it needs service or the filter changed.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen this play out before where other smart devices have been infected with malware by Chinese hacking groups. They take advantage of really weak administrative passwords, take advantage of weak security networks to be able to infiltrate our Internet of Things devices. This is a serious national security issue as the United States and many other countries, the consumers are turning more toward having these smart devices.
I mean, it's not even just that they could hack it. I think they make it. I think I own a General Electric refrigerator, which I think is now owned by a Chinese company.
Yeah, that is true. Very often, a lot of our technology is manufactured in China, and there is a serious concern that those electronics we're receiving might have malicious hardware or software embedded in them. Now, there's one thing in this proposal that there could be possible exceptions. So some of these Chinese companies, right, they're able to keep costs low, that keeps American consumers happy, that they could essentially apply for an exemption to this and still be able to provide their services to the U.S. market. Now, that's only going to be successful if there is stringent oversight and validation that the security risks are not there.
So the U.S. government would have to actually look at their hardware and their coding to see if it's not got something embedded in it? Is that how that works? Yes,
exactly. Or if, a U.S. manufacturer is procuring components that are manufactured in China, then essentially the onus is on them to ensure that they are not procuring a technology that has any of these vulnerabilities.
Interesting stuff, huh?
We live in a very interesting time where our fridge is now a potential weapon to start a war. Yeah, I guess that's a new phrase for the Cold War.
That's good. Thank you so much for the time and the lesson.
Thank you so much for having me.
Brandie Nonnecke, founding director of the CITRIS Policy Lab, an associate professor at UC Berkeley's Goldman School of Public Policy, and host of the podcast TecHype.